Today's episode is about a topic that's very important to me. It's about women. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Why are women important to me? And what gives a man the right to talk about women and their rights in this episode? Well, I've spent my entire life surrounded by badass women. My best friend Shannon is a doctor in Boston now, and she's the hardest working person I've ever met. And here on the Seacoast, there's my mentors, Stephanie and Jen, two extremely successful business owners who exhibit kindness and confidence and are two women you definitely don't want to mess with. Growing up, most of my close friends were women. In college, the only friends I had were women. And since graduating, I've often turned to the women of my life for guidance when I've needed it most. This may sound strange to you, especially to the men listening, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Personally, I connect so much better with women. They open up more than men do. They're more vulnerable. They talk about fears, doubts, and what makes them happy. The real shit I love talking about. I'm not saying men are only capable of discussing beer, sports, and finance. There are certainly some men I can get deep with. I've just always found that women, for the most part, make me feel more seen than men do. From years of having these intimate conversations and of having female roommates, I do have a small degree of understanding regarding just how difficult it is to be a woman. And that's why I was so excited when I first heard about a Seacoast organization called Soul Models. It's a nonprofit that serves middle school girls in the area. For 10 weeks at a time, Soul Models and their staff facilitate a number of activities at a select school. Things like art, yoga, cooking, and mindfulness. A curriculum designed to give young girls the tools they need to navigate one of the hardest periods in a woman's life. I'm Trey Farkas, and this is Seacoast Stories, a podcast about the people, businesses, and newsmakers that make the Seacoast an American hidden gem. On today's episode, my conversation with Carrie Penna about her journey from Lululemon to Soul Models Executive Director, from the Seacoast to San Diego and back, the heartbreaking stories that young girls tell themselves, and so much more. Carrie, when you think about your role as executive director of Soul Models here on the Seacoast, I'm wondering how what you're doing now connects back to your middle school experience.
I love that question. Short backstory for myself is that middle school, I grew up in Durham. Great upbringing, had two amazing parents, a lovely sister, a dog, yay. With the traditional middle school things that are hard, like skin is out of control, figuring out liking boys, body changing, all that. And then we lost my dad suddenly. Ooh, I was not expecting that. So it changed my life completely, obviously. And so for middle school, there weren't a lot of resources in the Seacoast area. There was hospice, and you could go to support groups there. But just as far as in middle school, you want to be the same. You don't want to look different. You don't want to be different. You want to just blend. That's scary to stand out. So finding resources that fit my desires and my needs, but also got me the resources that I needed as I was grieving, just weren't there and weren't available. So fast forward about 30 years, I heard about Soul Models and the mission, and it was my absolute heart song. And I just knew that bringing something like this organization to middle school girls in the Seacoast was what I was meant to do.
I'm sorry that you lost your dad so early on in life, and he himself was so young as well. If you don't mind me asking, what was that like?
Oh, gosh. Horrific, as an understatement. But yeah, it's a wild experience to have anyone who's experienced sudden loss versus someone that may be sick and you can prepare. There's never really, and I've I've lost people both ways, unfortunately, but there's never, an easy way. But I will say that losing someone suddenly and having your life just do a complete reverse of direction is jarring. And I was 11, my sister was 12, and you're in such a formative time of your life. Oh gosh. Yeah. When I think about my middle school self, like my heart almost hurts for that person because it was hard. And I had a great collective. Like there were people in our lives that showed up and supported, but it was hard. It was really, really, and it can, as you can tell, like it still impacts me to this day. But
reflecting upon your middle school experience, you said skin was an issue, dealing with boys was an issue. Yeah. Can you recall any specific experiences or memories where your middle school girl struggles were really pronounced?
Oh, gosh. I mean, here's something that I will not get on my soapbox for this podcast on this, but I do feel like there is a movement where at least, I was born in the 80s. So like at least for a long time, it was acceptable to really be super hush hush about girls' bodies and don't ask questions. It was humiliating to have your period, right? Which was like, oh my God, you had to have these like hidden things. So I just remember just being so embarrassed and trying to hide something and not wanting to ask questions and not know. And so I just remember that feeling of your face almost turning hot and red where anyone would like be looking at you and be different or know anything. It's just like blend, dress like everybody else, do the same thing. That was kind of my vibe in middle school.
So after middle school, as you said, you were a Durham girl. You go to Stonehill College.
I did.
And what did you do there? And what was the plan for beyond Stonehill?
Yeah, I went in as undecided and became a business major, marketing. And it was mostly just because I didn't know what else to do, but I generally liked the professors. So I was like, okay, this could be a direction for me. A plan. Gosh, I feel bad saying this because we work so hard on vision and goals and everything that we do. But I'm like, I didn't have a plan. I graduated college at 21 and moved into Boston. Stonehill, for those that don't know, is in Massachusetts. And so most of my friends that I graduated with were from there. So we decided get a big house in Boston. We all lived together. There's like 6 of us and worked. I always found myself choosing jobs that were giving back. So I worked at Dana-Farber and volunteered for the American Heart Association or the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And I said to myself, when you figure out what you want to do, like what's your career, then you can channel change away from more of these things about giving back. And it took a really, really long time. But I'll say, in that process, I had a couple more significant losses. And at that point, decided I wanted to move out to San Diego and press reset and get myself back to a space where I felt happy and healthy. And I think sometimes when you have a significant loss, you're reminded how short life is. And you're like, what am I going to do with this one beautiful, amazing life? Whoever that is, that Oprah? I don't know. But yeah, so I was like, oh, I want to go to San Diego. It looks beautiful. It looks fun. I'm going to go back to school for holistic health. I'm going to wake up every day and love my life. And then I did that for 5+ years.
Were you not loving your life before?
I was, except I was born on the wrong side of the country. I love me some sunshine and some warm weather. And so I wanted to be somewhere with warm weather. And I was working, although I loved working at Dana-Farber, their work, their mission, what they do, what they create for patients and families, like I would work for them again in a heartbeat. And I was working in finance. And so I was in a cube and there was no windows near my cube. And I was on a computer with Excel, and I was like, at that time I was 25. So I was like, is this it? Is this it? Like I get up and it's Groundhog Day-ish. But I had great friends. I loved my apartment. I loved so many pieces of my life. So I wasn't unhappy, but I was like, as morbid as this is, like if I were to die tomorrow, would I really feel like I loved my life? And I was like, there has to be more. So I was ready to explore and see what else was there. So I was like, okay, let's pause. Let's channel change. Let's do something different. And I ended up working for San Diego Hospice in the bereavement department. And your face is actually a lot nicer than a lot of people's. When I say that, they look pretty shocked. People are like, that actually sounds like my personal fucking hell to work in the bereavement department.
Yes. Well, it just, as sad as it is to say, you've had a lot of experience with death. So it's not something that, it's something that you understand better than most. And
I felt like, it might sound weird to say, but I feel like my experience was almost a gift to the people calling, where it's like, I have been in your shoes. And if I can make that first phone call or those 5 minutes that they're speaking with me feel better or calm whatever anxieties they're having after their loss, I'm like, what a gift that like I can do that for them.
It was a beautiful way that you described how you felt about your work then and the important stuff that you were doing. But was that heavy?
Yeah. I think eventually that's really what drove me to shift, is because part of the job was someone calls and they have to tell you what happened. So after a while, I was like, ooh, I did this and I can't do this anymore because it's starting to impact my mental health. And you can't pour from an empty cup, as they say, right? So my cup was starting to get empty. And I love giving back, but you can't be a martyr. So it was like, I cannot sacrifice myself to help others. So at that time, the universe beautifully provided, and I was able to shift in a career path that I ran into. I was at this like cute little beach party and of a friend, and I ran into someone who I went to high school with back here.
In San Diego?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And she was managing a Lululemon in La Jolla, and she was recruited me, and she was like, I'm a hell yes for you working for us. Are you open? And I'm like, yep.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was really, I think sometimes people feel like, oh, manifestation or whatever you want to say. They're like, oh, that's too wooey, or like, that's a little crazy. But I do think there's something so important about putting into the universe. If it's on your heart, put it out in your goals, wherever it is, tell everyone you know so they can hold you accountable. And I do think that something energetically does come back to you. It was like, I also feel very strongly, as I'm sure you can tell, like my guardian angels are like, we got your back, bitch. Like I do feel that way. And so it was a really, really needed and amazing transition where I got to shift and I made a lot of friends. I got paid to move my body. I got to use my business background, and eventually, fast forward a little bit, I got to move. They relocated me to Portsmouth. So I got to move home and still keep my job and work for them, but got to relocate to be, I'm nicely sandwiched between my mom's in Maine and my sister's in Massachusetts. So I'm like sandwiched in the beautiful middle in New Hampshire.
And was that your request to come back to the Seacoast?
Yeah. So I had written goals about what I had for a vision for myself. And one of them was I had the mindset I wanted to open up a showroom for them in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So a showroom, real quickly, is more community focused. It is small amount of it is retail, but it's super focused on supporting your community.
Yeah. And sorry to cut you off. What year
it.
Is this? Just to understand what stage of Lululemon growth we're in.
I want to say this was like 2014.
Okay. So Lululemon is not ubiquitous like it is today.
No, when I first moved home and I would tell people who I worked for, some people blank stares. Had no idea. There was no Lululemon in New Hampshire. I believe there was a showroom up in the Portland area. and then Boston. But yeah, there was really like this area had the outlet didn't exist.
Right.
And so I interviewed for it. And basically it aligned with when my sister was having her first child, and which was very important to me to be home for since our family is small. So I came home and interviewed during her baby shower and went back and forth. And then I got the job, and Lululemon moved me to Portsmouth. I want to say it was like 20 days before my first niece was born.
Wow.
Yeah. I think maybe it was Katie Marshall. I feel like in another podcast, but someone was saying that they came back and they're like, this is just me, and no shade on the people in California. I still have dear friends there. And I do feel like I'm a New England girl. I just feel most like my authentic self when I'm here. I wanted to find a partner, and I really felt strongly. I was like, okay, if I meet him here, there's a strong possibility that he'll want to stay here. And I really, really, really want my mom and my sister and my aunts, just my family are so part of my fabric that I have to be there in a bigger capacity. So I was like, I'm ready to come back.
Yeah. So when you're about 30 years old in this time.
Moved back at 30. Yeah.
So you were single at 30.
Yes.
I'm curious about this because I'm 28 and I have a lot of friends, and including myself, who are single, and there's this societal pressure we feel to adhere to the timeline because, in previous decades, if I'm 28, you should already be years into your one job at this one company, going up the ladder. You should be married or with the person that you're going to marry, maybe a baby's, maybe you got a house, all these check marks you're supposed to have checked off, and you didn't have those.
I didn't.
At age 30. Did you feel this pressure?
I did. And not to say, like, I love to hear that you're saying that too, but I like that perspective because I think I hear it from a lot of my friends who are girls or women rather. And so it is interesting to hear from a man that you also feel that pressure. And
mostly comes from my mom. She wants grandkids.
I am so blessed that my family actually didn't push hard, that was nice. But it was hard because you almost feel a scramble, and that energetically could not be like a worse vibe to be putting out as you're going out on dates or interacting with people. As like the kids say, it's like, it's giving desperate, you know, like it's just you're not attracting your true partner or someone who's going to be a good fit because you're trying to just grasp onto someone and you've got your little checkbox, right? You're like, okay, they live here. They've got a job. They've got a car. They don't live in their mom's, whatever it is, like you have your thing and it's like, okay, great. They fit that because I'm trying to find my husband or my wife or whatever. And that's a really shitty feeling to try to just be grasping at to get that next and then what? Like you find that person and then people are like, well, when are you getting married? Or when are you having kids? It's just being present and enjoying where you are and what you have accomplished. I think as a society, we don't celebrate those things enough. There's baby showers, there's wedding showers, but is there like congratulations on like a bomb ass podcast celebrating people? Well, you did have a party, but like, like are we celebrating like there's definitely no registry for like congrats on killing it at that job that makes your heart happy, or congratulations on leaving that relationship that was not fulfilling for you. Like we just like
we need more milestones to celebrate.
We do. And also just less pressure.
I'll pry into your personal life later on. Let's get back to the career, though.
Yes.
So your time at Lululemon, come back to the Seacoast to work in Portsmouth at the Lululemon showroom. How was that experience? How did you enjoy it?
I absolutely loved it. It was really cool to have someone else's budget, but get to be the mastermind. And I'm a collaborative person and a team person, and I love that. So I got to hire 2 people, and the 3 of us got to create our own business. So they're like, they being Lululemon, they essentially are like, here's a budget. go find a realtor, go find real estate, go find a builder. How are you going to design the fitting rooms? How are you going to decorate it? Every single thing was up to myself, and their names are Andrea and Angie. So the three of us got to create our own business and open it. And it was really freaking cool.
I love talking about people's missions on the show and what drives you to do what you do. So I'm just wondering, at Lululemon, what was the motivation for working there? What did you love so much about that experience that really made you feel like you were contributing to the world in a positive way?
Yeah. If you look at it at like a very like surface level, it's like, oh, you were selling stretch pants, okay? And
comfortable stretch pants.
Very. And
great
they
stuff.
Look great.
Yeah.
And the background to it, they did, and I'm talking about before people jump all over me, I'm talking about a long time ago before there was a lot of things that have shifted. I can't even speak to what they do now. However, back in the day, they poured really heavily into their people. There was a lot of development happening, a lot of team building. And so not only professionally, but personally. So I really felt like this is unbelievable. I got an opportunity to work with, and there were a few men, but primarily women. And so these really like boss ass women that were developing businesses, and I got to hone those skills. So I loved that. And then on a smaller level, I loved getting to know the Portsmouth community, and I had a budget to support local businesses. So whether I'm going into studios and taking classes or planning events or having mingles with different community members at certain restaurants or bars, the primary part of that job outside when you weren't running retail was to be in your community, connecting and supporting and uplifting. So I was like, I get paid to do that? That is so amazing.
Interesting. The business was just selling stretch pants. So why was that a essential part of the job?
You know, something that they would always say is you are your best mannequin. So they would have us in the community doing those things in obviously the apparel.
Yeah.
So that drives traffic back to the showroom so that when you are open for the 3 days of the week that you're open, then people are coming in. Oh, I saw you at Three Bridges, or I saw you here. Like,
so you're out in the community, you're chatting to people, and they're like, oh, those pants, I like that. What are those? I've never seen that. And then you say, oh, it's Lululemon.
Which was a really hard mind fuck when I left Lululemon, because a lot of people were like, oh, you're Carrie Lululemon. You know, I think a lot of people like didn't even know what my last name was. Wow. You know, it was just, I still to this day get people come up to me and they're like, I don't know how I know you. You look so familiar. And they finally are like, the showroom. And I'm like, oh yeah, we closed that 7 years ago. But it's like, it's still, so it was such a part of my identity that when I left Lululemon and was looking for my next step, which became Soul Models, I was like, well, who am I if I'm not Carrie Lululemon?
So when and why did you leave?
I left because they were shifting my role, and it was going to be my showroom was on State Street, and so they were going to be moving it to the Rockingham Mall in Salem and shifting the actual role to lose the community components. So I was like, okay, hold on. I'm going to have a commute of 45 minutes to get to Salem. I don't even know. Yeah. But like 45 if there's traffic. So like I'm in the car for 2 hours now, as opposed to I live in Portsmouth. So I had like a 5-minute scooter ride. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to be in the car for 2 hours. Don't love driving. I'm going to be in a mall. I don't even shop in malls. I don't like them. The air is recirculated and the lighting is just like depressing. It's just not for me. The community based, it's gone. So that like the role, everything was changing. And I had to sit down because it's a hard choice when you're like, oh, I've got my 401k. I know this role like the back of my hand. At that point, I think I had been with the company for maybe like 7 years. And I'm like, so I know this backwards and forwards. I know the other managers. I know my team. There's just so many things where it was really comfortable, where I was like, I could stay. I don't want to look for a new job. I don't want to redo my resume. And similar to when I made my move out to San Diego, I sat and I was like, when you get up in the morning, are you going to say, I love my life. Are you even going to be able to say, I like my life? And I knew really clearly that it was a no. I was like, I'm going to be miserable. And so I left.
So you left Lululemon. You left behind the corporate lifestyle, the 401k, your identity. When you moved on from that, how hard was it to make that decision?
Oh, it was really scary. Yeah, I cried. That's my go-to release. Yeah, it was really difficult because it's scary. I don't love change. Change does not excite me. I'm not like, ooh, I'm ready to mix it up. So yeah, it was really, really scary. But the other side of that was if you don't do this, that's worse. I was like, okay, change is scary. This feels outside of my comfort zone. But you know what's even more scary is doing something that I'm positive doesn't feel aligned. I am sure of it. So rip off that Band-Aid, bitch.
So the change that you found was at Soul Models.
Yeah.
Why did you join Soul Models?
So I will also say I love this experience. So thank you for having me here, because I think sometimes going back to how we don't take enough time to celebrate or really think about our successes, this opportunity was different. I'm like, wow, I haven't really thought about this. I want to say this November, it'll have been 7 years I've been in my role, but I took this summer off because I was not willing to just jump right from Lululemon into, a career that didn't feel like it was going to be. I didn't want a job. I wanted a career. At that point, I was 35. And so I was like, let's find something that's going to be taking us into our next chapter here. So I ended up going to, they had an event and it was local. And I had heard about it through connections with Lululemon because Lululemon had a lot of yoga at their core. And so I went to this annual event and I heard a couple of the participants from their focus groups speaking about their experience and what it was like. And I got to just hear what they were up to. And I knew immediately that I wanted to get involved. However, at that time, because event planning is hard, it really shifted where a lot of the volunteers needed to take a step back and a lot of the board members were coming on their term. And the woman who founded the organization also had some personal things coming on where it was the perfect, beautiful transition where I was able to step in as the executive director. But yeah, that was how it came about.
Why is this something that middle school girls need?
Oh, there's so many reasons. I'm not a numbers person, although I know I said I was in finance at one point, but there's really wild statistics around women and girls. And I will say the New Hampshire Women's Foundation does a great job with the research, but we're still not paid equally to men. And there's so many areas we still don't have, I don't want to get too political on this, but, we still are having to fight for the right to make choices on our own flipping bodies. There's so many reasons that it's important to make sure that girls know their voices are valuable. We want to hear them. You are strong, you are important, and you're valuable. So empowering them so that they know that they can be these engaged leaders and grow into strong advocates for themselves and for their people and in our world. In my opinion, it starts at a young age so that as they're growing and getting older, they already feel set up for success. They already know that you're so insanely valuable because not everyone's getting that at home. Some are. And that's great. And let's reiterate that message if they are. And I think that old adage, like it takes a village. So maybe there'll be people and at home, their home is providing food and clothes. And that's really where they have to tap out or whatever it is. And then Soul Models can be another avenue that we're making sure they're receiving all the social emotional support that maybe they aren't receiving.
And how do the experiences of middle school girls today compare to the one that you were having?
It is frighteningly similar. There's still that bodies changing, friends changing. Some of the schools we're in, for example, Cooperative Middle School, one of the schools that we're in the fall, there's 6 different feeder towns that come into that one large middle school. So you're coming from a teeny tiny town and now you're in this gigantic middle school. And so you're trying to, one of the biggest fears that the girls talk about, and I don't mean to laugh to downplay it, but it just like, as an adult, you're like, how is that the worst? But going into school and having someone to sit with at lunch is like, I'm saying like, let's do this podcast naked. It is like, people are like, no way. If they don't have a seat and someone to know, it's like social suicide. So there's so much, and the girl on girl kind of meanness. I don't want to say necessarily like bullying, but definitely the cattiness kind of picks up in middle school. And
How so? What does that look like?
I think people are trying to find their cliques or their people that they feel comfortable with. And I don't know if I have a particular example of what's said, but definitely excluding people, or these friends are going to wear the same outfit, or they're going to go do this after school, but you're not included. We're going to start this text thread and you're not part of it, or we're going to wear the same shoes and you can't know. Or like there's weird, I don't know how to explain. I feel like I'm not doing a good job explaining what their experience.
The embodiment of Regina George, like
Yes.
we wear sweatpants on whatever day.
Yes. Yes. And I actually just watched the musical version of it recently, and how, you can't sit with us because she was wearing the sweatpants, or like we wear pink on Wednesdays, or whatever the heck it is. It's alive and well. And that is absolutely happening a lot. So
you mentioned the text thread thing. I'm so fascinated with kids' interactions with technology these days. So obviously you, when you were growing up, didn't have these technologies. How is the technology leading to the exclusion and the cattiness in creating these problems that you did not have to deal with?
Yeah. One of the girls that was in our program over the winter time was telling me that somehow someone got her phone number and they were texting her not nice things. And they were barking at her, which I'm like, what? I don't know. And I don't even want to, I can't assume. I have no idea what this 12-year-old was thinking. Why? It's like, are you barking? Because I'm not going to assume what's in their head, but it's not nice. I think we can all know that like, that's not kind so they'll send like not nice. There's been emails that will go out, and they're using that. And I never had to experience that. So when they get to Soul Models, we actually ask them to put their phones away. It's a phone-free zone. And so that eliminates, there's no dinging. So there's no the anxiety behind like, what was that? There's no reminders or what did I miss? Or there's no Snapchats of, things you weren't included in, or we just eliminate that completely so that they can connect and be super present in the room. And by and large, I'll say people feel like you can feel this collective, like after, like the initial is like, my phone? No, but after that, it really is a relief to be able to not have to worry about what's going on and all the socials.
You've brought some of the creations from some of the young girls that are going to your Soul Model summer camps and your programs throughout the year. Are we okay to read out some of the things that have been said, or is that private information?
Nope, they are good with it.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to read this, and I want your reaction to it. This, on this scribbled up piece of paper, written in purple marker, says, "I'm not talented enough. I can't do it. I'm not smart." What is the context of this? What was the assignment? And what is your reaction to that?
The assignment was, we were talking about the stories that we tell ourselves. So a lot of times, I forget the actual numbers of it, but we have like something like 10,000 thoughts in a day. And there's a really large percentage of them that skew negative. And so the stories we tell ourselves, the thoughts we have, if by and large they're negative, when you look in the mirror or when you think about yourself, there's negative things that show up and they come in. So we talked about how important the language that we use towards ourselves, and also contrast the language that we use towards our friends or our loved ones, and how we would be really upset if someone said to your best friend, like, you are not smart. If I said that, the first thing you'd say is like, don't talk to my friend like that. Or like, yes, she is very smart. You know, you'd be very upset. But somehow it's really easy to just say to yourself, like, you're not pretty, you're not smart, you're not enough, whatever it is. And that's the story you begin to believe. So for this one, we had them write down the stories that they really were ready to let go of, that either they don't think it's true anymore and they're ready to throw it out, or they don't like it and they want to start trying to let it go. So they wrote it on the paper and then we crumpled them up and we threw them. I had a trash bag and we threw them away as like a physical representation of like, this is shit I want to let go of. I didn't say shit. They're 12, you know, like in middle school. But yeah, like that's the stuff that like, let it go.
And are these effective exercises for them? Can you see as an observer, can you see a change when they throw this piece of paper away?
Yeah, it's cool to see at the end of our 10 weeks together, we have them fill out almost a survey, if you will, and try to keep it less school-like because we want it to still be fun, but it's tangible information that we need. We want to hear their testimonials of what the experience was like. And it's pretty unbelievable. There was last year at Cooperative Middle School, there was a couple of students, one in particular, who was so shy that she would hide behind, in the room that we were in, there was bleachers. She would sit behind them and not even in our circle. Like, so she was like, day one was just could not be more uncomfortable with being in the group setting. And even over the 10 weeks, unbelievable to see her feel more connected, like gradually though. So like the next day or the next week that we met would come sit in the circle with us. And we always introduce ourselves to I call them our facilitator friends. But so then would feel ready to say her name when we're introducing ourselves. And then fast forward, because this was last fall, she came to our summer program and was engaging and interacting with, she goes to Cooperative Middle School, but there was girls from St. Pat's, Portsmouth Middle School, and Hampton Academy at the Portsmouth program. And she was like starting conversations. She was interacting. She was sharing unprovoked. It just feels, I could talk just like endlessly about, and that's just one story about what I've heard from them about the skills or the tools or the confidence that they get from the experience with soul models.
Let's talk about some of the logistics of soul models. If I am a parent of a 6th grade girl on the Seacoast, how do I get her into soul models?
That's a great question. So if you are lucky enough to live in one of the schools that we're already in, then you can go right on our website. Registration's already open for Barrington and Cooperative Middle School. So you can just fill out that form and you're ready to rock for the fall. If you are not in one of the schools that we're already in, you may need to wait until the summertime because the summer programs are open to any schools. So when I had listed like St. Pat's or Hampton Academy or whatever, like we don't have programs in those schools, but the summer programs are open to everybody. So you could sign up your kiddo to go to summer. Or lastly, let's say you live in the Seacoast area and you're interested in bringing soul models into your district, absolutely reach out to me or to info@soulmodels.org, which will find its way to me. And then, because we are interested in adding one more school in the next year or so. So
what's the structure if I get my sixth grade girl into Soul Models because she's in one of these schools? What's the curriculum? What will I be putting my daughter through?
Yeah, so it'll be 10 weeks and it's the same day every week. So I'll use Barrington as an example. So we'll be meeting on Tuesdays for 10 weeks. So she'll get there and we always do a snack because lunch for some of these larger schools is at 10 a.m. or like 10:15. So by the time we get to Soul Models at 2 o'clock, they're just ravenous. So we do a nutritious snack. Either we do organic fruit, super healthy things that are nutritious things that are going to fuel their body. Also crunchy snacks, which as a ADHDer, I just like the crunch. I've read somewhere is like good to help you focus.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know where.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
more granola people.
Love it. So we get them something in their bellies so it's easy to focus. And we sit together and we do a little bit of grounding, like talking about our day. Sometimes we'll do something called like high, low, high, where you share something about your day that you want to celebrate, you feel excited about. A low, something that happened that kind of stunk and that either you want support or you just wanted to vent, whatever it is. And we have something called the parking lot. So if it's something that comes up that needs to be flushed out or discussed a little bit more outside of our circle share, we can do that. And then we end it on a high note with another high and we go around and it's a nice way to get a pulse check and see, because as again, I'm not part of the faculty. So I would not know if there was a certain dance coming up or if there was a test that most of the people in Spanish had or whatever it is. So it's like gives me a little, and the facilitators are like, okay, what are we up against today? How's everyone? Pulse check. And then we get into the program part with the facilitator. So whether I mention the masks, sometimes we'll make affirmation jars. We've done worry dolls. We've done yoga. We've done smoothie making with Jen from Lainey and Lou. Like we do, every week there'll be that primary chunk. We have that facilitator come and we do our project, or Amy. She came in and we decoupaged boxes and she gave them an art kit so that they could paint wherever they were. So that was pretty unbelievable. Bridget's come in and done flower crowns. And so they have this really creative, fun outlet that they love. And then the message behind that is, how do you want to feel when you put your crown on? They wanted to feel powerful and strong and important. Right now, the catchphrase for a lot of middle schoolers is slay queen.
Oh, yeah.
So there was a lot of slay queen, so it's a 2-hour session. So like after snack in our touch base and our connection time, and then the activity, then if there's enough time, we'll do a meditation to close out our day so that we can move forward. And then boom, 2 hours goes by in a dang blink. Yeah. And then parents pick up and we'll see them the next week.
So I want to ask you this. I've been fascinated recently on this subject. I've listened to a lot of podcasts about it, read a lot of studies about it, and have just had conversations about it. Young women are advancing and growing and getting a bunch of opportunities that they weren't before, which is amazing and long past overdue. But that growth and that progress has come at the expense of men's growth and progress. And I'm not pouring one out for men here. It's about time that this change was made. But men are moving backwards. And I've gathered straight white men today, which again, I know, we don't need to feel too bad for them. But because we're in this world today where LGBTQ is being prioritized, where gender roles are becoming a thing of the past or frowned upon, if you're a man who leans into being a man and being a provider and a protector and fulfilling those traditional gender roles, you kind of feel weird living in this modern world. And so a lot of those men are lonely and they feel alienated. And a lot of the world's problems today can be traced to lonely, young, white, straight men. And I do feel bad for them. Do you have any thoughts on this? Am I making any sense here?
I have a couple thoughts on that. I do feel like, in our 10-year goal, we have talked about that we want a Soul Models for boys. And so I do feel, and maybe this is an unpopular opinion, I do want to keep it separate because I do think that there are conversations and a comfortability that happens when you get to be independent from others.
Absolutely.
And so I do want it to be separate. And with that said, I think it's important because if we keep at this point, I do think that girls have less opportunities. And so that's why we want them to keep. And with that said, if we keep leveling all our girls up and like we're not providing services for our boys and our men, it's like that's going to happen.
Right.
And so if you also look around statistically about shootings in our country.
Yeah.
Hey, white men.
No, seriously.
You know, so it's like this mental health crisis in our country is affecting everybody. And we're not providing the same services to men and boys. But on top of that, even if they are available, there's still like a really weird stigma, in my opinion. And this is just my opinion. But I think that similar to what you're saying, it's men, it doesn't feel as accessible. And it's a weird, I've heard it before where someone's like, oh, like so-and-so goes to therapy, like weird, you know, it's just not. Whereas women are more open and feel more comfortable sharing about those things.
Yeah. And as I move forward in my life, I definitely want to think about how I can help young men and become young men who are masculine men who do what men do, but also support and uplift women. That's an ideal man right there who does both.
Absolutely. So. And it exists.
Yeah.
Like it absolutely exists. I also think you said you think about how you can be involved in that. I'm like, well, in our 10-year plan, as I mentioned, but I do think that it's important to have an experience different than mine. So I would want essentially an executive director or a program director of the Soul Models for Boys to be a man. Because I think that for many reasons that we don't have time for. However, I'm like, maybe that would be you.
Okay. Your people can call my people.
Yeah. It was Aaron Smith, who owns Fresh Press. At one point, he was thinking he wanted to do that with us. This is years ago. And he was going to call it Bro Models because he wanted it to be a surfing component to it. And I was like, let's workshop that, Aaron. But I like where his head was at.
On the right track.
Yeah.
You have a big event coming up in October called Soul Powerful at the Dance Hall in Kittery. What is this? Tell me more.
So we've been doing this for a few years now, and it's our annual fundraiser where we do the primary, like the brunt of the fundraising and for scholarships and all of the different pieces that take to run an organization. So when you get there, there's amazing stuff like local food and amazing music. We'll have Jen, DJ Scooch. She'll be spinning some tunes. We have, we have at least 2 of our participants that will be speaking about their experience, and hearing it firsthand I could talk about this, as you can tell, I could talk about it till I was blue in the face, and being able to hear it come out of their mouths, and they completely create what they're going to speak on. We say to them, share your experience. And then of course their school counselor and their teacher kind of evolve what they're going to say. However, it's really them speaking from the heart about their experience. You get to experience that. There's a live auction. It's pretty rad. A silent auction. The energy in the room, cannot be beat.
And is this a ticketed event? How do people go?
It sure is.
Okay.
So it is live. You can buy tickets now. And if anyone's listening and they're a calendar person, October 22nd, it's a Tuesday, and it's at 5:30. It'll go until 8. And as you mentioned, it's at the Dance Hall in Kittery, which is another amazing nonprofit as well.
I will put a link in the show notes to that. So if anyone is interested in supporting the cause, you can find the info there. I promised everyone that I would pry into your personal life. So let's go back to that.
Okay.
And I do want to state that I have prior clearance to discuss this.
I know where you're going.
You made the decision to freeze your eggs when you were 37.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you make this decision?
Because I have wanted to be a mom my whole life. I feel even when I wasn't sure what I wanted to do career-wise or where was what, all the details of it. I always felt really strongly that I wanted to be a mom. And at 37, I was not finding the person that I was hoping to be a parent with. And it was changing my decisions in dating and the anxiety I was having, like we were talking about, like the checklist and the finding and the goal, all that. And I felt like it was really impacting me in a way that was not positive. And so I was like, I'm going to give myself the gift of time, where if that comes as a possibility, I have 37-year-old eggs instead of 42 in a few weeks. And I can give myself, it's very, very expensive insurance for being a mom someday.
Yeah. What was this process like? You don't have to get into the nitty gritty of what it entailed unless you want to.
I think it's cool because I was embarrassed about the whole experience initially because I felt like there was some shame surrounding it as far as, oh, I'm this washed up person who couldn't find a partner. And so I have to resort to this. And I really that would be the story that I would crumple up and throw away. Instead, I'm a capable, confident person who knows what the hell I want. And I'm going to make sure that I'm lining up so that I can. So did some research. I'm forgetting the name of the facility. It's in Stratham, but they work closely with Brigham and Women's. And so they have doctors that come up from the Brigham once a week. And so I worked with them, and there's a lot of shots, a lot of medications, a lot of testing, a lot of ultrasounds, a lot of emotional. It was dating during that too was wild. So it was an experience, but I feel forever grateful that I did that for myself because it gave me a lot of peace. And then the surgery happens at Brigham and Women's. And now my little eggies, I've got 9 little eggies that are on ice, and I get to choose with what I do going forward.
And were you openly telling people that you were doing this at the time?
Not at the very beginning, but then, shortly into, now I'm pretty open about it. And it's been really beautiful to see, as I mentioned before. I think society, I don't know, they try to keep women in the dark about their bodies and our choices. And so when I finally felt comfortable sharing that, a lot of people were like, hey, can my friend text you? Or like, can I grab a coffee? I want to learn more about this. And it's for anyone listening, if you're considering it, the first step is just a blood test. It's super duper easy. It's not invasive. If you want to educate yourself about your levels and your body and because you're not washed up at 40 like they tell us. However, fertility shifts with age, obviously. So I think it's important to just educate yourself. It's your body. So you have every right to ask those questions and figure it out. So absolutely do that.
A common thread throughout this conversation, when we had started talking, you were talking about how middle school girls and your experiences and how there's such shame around a 7th grade girl getting her period. There's so much shame for a girl in her 20s talking about her sex life. There's so much shame for a woman in her 30s talking about freezing eggs. Why do you think this is the case? Why is there so much shame around these normal human experiences?
I mean, that's a great question. I don't know if I have an answer for that. I want to preface it with saying that, I love men. I'm in a great relationship, so I'm not a man hater. But I do think that people in politics, or I think they're doing it to keep women down. I really do think that keeping us in the dark is a way to suppress and keep you out of power. I think when there's no education around something, that's when it's really easy to take advantage of someone, right? Like if you're not informed, and that's not even just women's bodies, that's just like in life, if someone is not educated, if they haven't been given the information around something, that's real easy to sway them a certain way that you want them to go, or to push them in a direction that you would like. So yeah, I think it's all around, it's a power play.
at Soul Models, this kind of messaging and these societal expectations around women, are these things that you get into?
They bring it up, actually.
Really?
So I was kind of shocked initially because when I first started my role, I wasn't sure what to expect. But yeah, that's a hard question to ask when you have an 11-year-old that's coming up to you that's like, so when I go to get a job, is my brother going to make more money than me just because he's a boy? You know, you're like, ooh, that's a gut punch. And you have to like be as delicate. Sometimes you're like, ooh, I don't want to like crush their spirit, but you need to give, you know, so it's like, well, it depends on the career path you take. It depends on education level. You know, it depends on a lot of things. And statistically, yes, right now, I'm forgetting what it is. I want to say last year it was like 82 cents to the dollar that women in New Hampshire make to men. And so it's like, yeah, statistically, you will be making less. And that's not always true because maybe your brother is going to go into being, and women tend to go into jobs that make less money as far as teaching. Like, no surprise here, right? Teachers get screwed when it comes to pay. So
psychologists as well.
I mean, they bring it up and we don't shy away from it.
So you're now 41 and in a happy relationship.
Yep.
And you were dating a lot in your 30s. What advice would you give to people in their 20s and 30s who are, both men and women, stressed out about the dating scene, are giving that desperate energy, and are uneasy about the dating life and wanting to, because they want to check all the boxes? What would you say to these people who are struggling?
You know, maybe I would tell them to do something that we do at Soul Models. So we just had a facilitator, Laura Fox, who had people write a joy list. So sit down and write things that bring you joy and do more of that. Do the things that bring you joy because the pieces are going to fall into place. And I definitely, for the friends of those people that are looking, I would say, please stop telling them to stop looking. The amount of times I would hear, just don't look. You'll find him when you're not looking. Like that advice drove me up a darn wall. So I would say for those people, please stop that. And then for the people that are looking is do the things that fill your cup. That hopefully will take that pressure valve, release some air on that. Fill up your own cup.
2 final questions for you.
Okay.
If your dad were still here today and he saw all that you've accomplished, working for Lululemon, this amazing, reputable company, now doing what you're doing with Soul Models, inspiring the next generation of young girls to become badass women, what would he say?
Okay. I think because I hear it from my mom, but also just I do feel it with like my whole heart. I know he'd be super proud. I know that he'd be like, fuck yeah, that is my girl. Like, I know that he'd be really, he always fought for what was right. He was a lawyer. Yeah, so I think he'd be super excited and passionate about what I'm creating for myself.
I know he'd be very proud. Carrie, we have one final question. We ask this same final question at the end of every episode every week, and I will ask it to you. Carrie, what is the mission that you are on right now?
My mission is to continue doing the things that fill my cup, to really look at my joy list every day and make sure that I'm living a life that I really fucking love.
And what is on your joy list?
Spending time with my mom and my sister and my nieces and Ben and the kids and growing Soul Models. I know it's cheesy because it's not even just a shameless plug for work. I absolutely it brings my heart joy to bring Soul Models to more people in our community. So growing the organization, riding my beach cruiser.
Classes at Studio One.
Studio One. Yes. Yes.
What a place.
I mean, I'm so glad that you were open to it because it really, the community there, badass. So yeah, taking classes, being on the journey to making sure that I feel like I am my happiest, healthiest self, because that's how I'm going to bring it to Soul Models.
For context, everyone, for Carrie to agree to this podcast, she said, I will only do this if you go to Studio One with Katie Marshall, previous guest on this show. That's the only context that you agreed to do this show. So I obliged. I went to the 9:30 Friday Studio One class today. And wow, it was amazing. You know, when I met Katie and had her on the show at her studio, energy was infectious. Great first impression. I've since seen her at Prescott Park Arts Festival, and she's the same outside the workplace as she is inside. What an incredible human being with an inspiring energy. I mean, talk about someone who should go to Soul Models and inspire some young women to become badass.
I mean, Studio One is actually a sponsor of Soul Powerful as well.
Love to hear that.
Full circle
Y'all
right
are in
there.
Perfect alignment. Yeah. So shout out to Katie and everything that she's doing, but also shout out to you, Carrie, and everything that you are doing. It's a very important work, and I can't wait to see how much it grows from here. So thank you for all you do, and thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you in October.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
That's Carrie Penna, the Executive Director of Soul Models. For more information on the group and also the Soul Powerful event, you can visit the links in today's show notes. To get new episodes of Seacoast Stories to your phone every Monday, just click the follow button on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's another busy week at Seacoast Stories Studios. Say that 3 times fast. I've got 3 interviews this week, all of which will be very important conversations. So if you happen to see me running around town this week, maybe sustaining myself at Noah Cafe, getting a much needed haircut at Groomsmith, or eating 7 apple cider crullers at Lil's Cafe, then please stop me and say hi. I would love to hear your story. Until next week, everybody, live free or die.